Have you ever stopped to think that some of the most dangerous drugs ever invented were once celebrated as miracle cures? It sounds unbelievable, but throughout the history of drugs, substances we now associate with addiction, overdose, and devastating health consequences were openly sold in pharmacies, prescribed by respected doctors and even recommended for children. What if I told you that humanity didn't stumble into these mistakes by accident, but because our endless curiosity often moved faster than science itself? In this journey through the craziest drugs in history, you'll discover how ancient drugs, bizarre medical experiments, and shocking historical medicine shaped civilizations, transformed wars, influenced politics, and permanently changed our understanding of the human brain. From mysterious plants used by ancient civilizations to the rise of opioids, the surprising cocaine history, the controversial heroin history, and the strange story behind LSD history, every chapter reveals how psychoactive substances altered not only consciousness, but the course of human history itself. Along the way, we'll explore forgotten medical practices, weird medical history, dangerous scientific mistakes, fascinating medical discoveries, and the remarkable evolution of brain chemistry, psychology, neuroscience, and our understanding of human behavior. You will also see why many of these addictive substances survived for centuries, how hallucinogens, stimulants, and medicinal drugs were misunderstood, and why some toxic medicines continued being prescribed long after their devastating effects became obvious. By the end of this video, you will realize that the story of drugs isn't just about chemistry, it is about ambition, desperation, curiosity, survival, and the remarkable ability of science to learn from its own mistakes. And trust me, some of the strangest historical facts in drug history explained moments are so unbelievable that they sound more like fiction than reality. For as long as humans have existed, we've searched for ways to change the way we think, feel, and experience the world. Long before laboratories and pharmacies existed, people experimented with mysterious plants, strange potions, and powerful natural compounds, believing they could unlock hidden knowledge, cure impossible illnesses, or even communicate with the gods. The history of drugs isn't just a story about chemistry, it's a story about human curiosity. What is truly fascinating is that many of the most dangerous drugs ever invented didn't begin as villains. They were celebrated as revolutionary breakthroughs in historical medicine, praised by doctors, governments, and entire civilizations. As we explore the craziest drugs in history, you'll discover how some of history's greatest medical triumphs eventually became its biggest cautionary tales. And this is only where the story begins. Thousands of years before modern medicine, ancient civilizations were already experimenting with ancient drugs found in nature. Healers in Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and the Americas carefully studied medicinal plants, tree resins, fungi, and herbs, believing they held the power to heal the body, ease pain, and unlock spiritual wisdom. Without microscopes or chemistry labs, observation became their greatest scientific tool. Some of the earliest psychoactive substances were never intended for recreation. Instead, they played central roles in sacred ceremonies, religious rituals, and healing practices. Shamans consumed hallucinogens such as peyote, sacred mushrooms, and other naturally occurring plants to enter altered states of consciousness, seeking guidance, visions, or deeper connections with the spiritual world. Surprisingly, many of these ancient traditions would later inspire modern research in psychology, neuroscience, and the fascinating relationship between brain chemistry and human consciousness. As civilizations advanced, so did their confidence in medicine. But confidence didn't always mean safety. Throughout the long history of historical medicine, countless medicinal drugs were prescribed with the best intentions, despite having little scientific evidence behind them. Doctors often relied on tradition, trial and error, or personal experience, unknowingly exposing patients to treatments that were far more dangerous than the illnesses themselves. Some of history's most infamous toxic medicines contained mercury, arsenic, lead, or highly addictive compounds that slowly poisoned the body while appearing to provide temporary relief. These shocking examples of weird medical history remind us how limited medical knowledge once was. Ironically, many of these painful mistakes eventually led to groundbreaking medical discoveries, laying the foundation for the scientific standards and patient safety practices we depend on today. It may sound impossible today, but there was a time when some of the world's most dangerous drugs could be purchased as easily as a bottle of cough syrup. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, pharmacies openly sold products containing opioids, cocaine, and even heroin. Few people questioned their safety because these substances were marketed as modern medical miracles rather than potential sources of addiction. The stories behind cocaine history, heroin history, and the widespread use of opium reveal just how different medicine once was. Cocaine appeared in tonics and surgical anesthetics. Heroin was promoted as a safer alternative to morphine, and opium was prescribed for everything from insomnia to chronic pain. Without strict regulation or a clear understanding of addiction explained, millions unknowingly became dependent on these powerful addictive substances, forcing society to rethink the entire future of medicine. Before clinical trials, ethical review boards, and scientific regulations existed, medicine often advanced through uncertainty. Physicians experimented with new treatments because there were few reliable ways to prove what actually worked. In this era of historical medicine, hopeful ideas frequently spread faster than evidence, creating one of the most fascinating and sometimes terrifying chapters in the history of drugs. Patients unknowingly became part of real-world experiments involving stimulants, opioids, herbal mixtures, and other psychoactive substances whose long-term effects were completely misunderstood. Looking back, these stories may seem shocking, but they also reveal how science gradually learned from failure. Every mistake, every unexpected outcome, and every hard-earned lesson helped shape the evidence-based medical system we rely on today, and the next chapter takes that experimentation to an entirely different battlefield. War has always pushed science and human endurance to their limits. As conflicts grew larger and more demanding, military leaders searched for anything that could keep soldiers awake longer, move faster, and ignore fear or exhaustion. Powerful stimulants and other psychoactive substances were distributed to thousands of troops, not for recreation, but as tools to gain a strategic advantage on the battlefield. These substances temporarily increased alertness, confidence, and energy by altering brain chemistry, particularly the release of dopamine and other neurotransmitters linked to motivation and focus. But the short-term benefits often came with devastating consequences, including dependency, impaired judgment, hallucinations, and long-term psychological damage. The connection between warfare, neuroscience, and human behavior would eventually reshape both military medicine and our understanding of how the brain responds under extreme stress. Few psychoactive substances have captured the world's imagination like hallucinogens. From sacred mushrooms, used by indigenous cultures, to peyote ceremonies in the Americas, and the accidental discovery behind LSD history, these substances have been praised as spiritual gateways, feared as dangerous mind-altering chemicals, and studied as possible breakthroughs in modern psychology and neuroscience. What makes these compounds so remarkable is the way they temporarily reshape brain chemistry. By interacting with serotonin receptors and other parts of the nervous system, they can dramatically alter perception, emotions, time, and even a person's sense of identity. While some researchers investigate their potential medical benefits under carefully controlled conditions, their fascinating history reminds us that the line between medicine, religion, and scientific discovery has often been far thinner than most people realize. Not every chapter in the history of drugs is defined by famous names like cocaine or LSD. Some of the most bizarre drugs ever created were obscure chemical experiments, exotic plant extracts or synthetic compounds designed for purposes that ranged from medical research to military testing. Many disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared, while others left behind stories so unbelievable they sound like urban legends. Throughout chemistry history, scientists have synthesized hundreds of powerful compounds capable of producing extraordinary effects on the human mind and body. Some promised revolutionary medical breakthroughs, but proved far too unpredictable or dangerous. Others revealed unexpected insights into brain chemistry, human behavior, and consciousness itself. These unusual experiments remind us that every scientific discovery carries both incredible potential and significant risk, a balance that becomes even more fascinating once we understand what these substances actually do inside the brain. To understand why these substances can be so powerful, we have to look inside the brain itself. Nearly every drug we've discussed alters brain chemistry by interfering with the way neurons communicate. Some increase dopamine, others affect serotonin, while many disrupt several neurotransmitter systems at once. The result is a temporary shift in perception, mood, energy, or awareness that can feel remarkably convincing even when it isn't reflecting reality. This is where neuroscience and psychology become essential to understanding addiction explained. The brain's reward system evolved to reinforce behaviors that help us survive, but many addictive substances hijack that system by producing unusually intense feelings of pleasure or relief. Over time, the nervous system adapts, making it harder to experience those same feelings naturally. That simple biological process has shaped countless lives and, as you'll see next, it has also influenced economies, politics, medicine, and the course of human history itself. The influence of drugs extends far beyond medicine. They have shaped economies, redirected political decisions, and even altered the outcome of wars. Throughout the history of drugs, powerful substances became valuable commodities, creating massive trade networks that enriched empires while fueling conflicts across continents. Few people realize that some of history's greatest economic booms were closely tied to the production and distribution of opioids and other highly sought-after psychoactive substances. At the same time, governments were forced to confront the growing social consequences of widespread addiction. New laws, international treaties, and public health campaigns emerged as science gradually uncovered the risks hidden behind once celebrated medicinal drugs. These turning points transformed historical medicine, accelerated important medical discoveries, and forever changed the relationship between politics, public health, and human behavior. Yet despite everything we've learned, one important question still remains: why do many of these substances continue to exist today? If science has revealed so many risks, why do some of these substances remain in use? The answer is more complex than simply labeling them as good or bad. Many dangerous drugs still have important medical applications when used under strict supervision. Certain opioids remain among the most effective treatments for severe pain, while other compounds once feared for their risks are being carefully re-examined through modern neuroscience and clinical research. At the same time, the challenges of addiction, illegal markets, and public health have not disappeared. Understanding addiction explained requires looking beyond the chemicals themselves and examining human behavior, mental health, genetics, and social environments. Today, researchers continue searching for safer therapies, better treatments, and new medical discoveries that preserve the benefits of these powerful substances while reducing their dangers. That ongoing balance between risk and progress brings us to the biggest lesson this remarkable journey has to offer. Looking back, the story of the most dangerous drugs ever invented isn't just a collection of strange historical facts, it's a reflection of humanity itself. Our curiosity has led to incredible breakthroughs, but it has also produced costly mistakes that affected millions of lives. Every chapter in the history of drugs reminds us that scientific progress rarely moves in a straight line. It advances through questions, failures, discoveries, and the willingness to challenge old beliefs with better evidence. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that knowledge is our strongest form of protection. The more we understand brain chemistry, psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior, the better equipped we are to separate medical innovation from dangerous misconceptions. The history of psychoactive substances teaches us that what seems revolutionary today should always be examined through the lens of evidence, ethics, and critical thinking. So which story surprised you the most? Were you shocked that cocaine and heroin were once sold as medicine? Did you know that substances used in ancient rituals are now being studied by modern scientists? And what do you think future generations will say about the medicines we use today? Let us know your thoughts. In the comments, we'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, science, and the human mind, make sure to subscribe to The Human Professor and turn on notifications so you never miss our next exploration. There are many more fascinating stories waiting to be uncovered, and the next one might completely change the way you see the world.